Do we have any questions from last week before we go into this week? If you try to do some charts and the pivots. Okay, looks like we're all pro in charts and pivots. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Great, okay.
Yes, we can, yes.
So today is VLOOKUP. And what is lookup? Lookup is when you use lookup to look up different data from different sources. So you want to bring two forms of data together, and you have like a unique characteristic that you want to use to bring the two data sets together. So you can use any form of lookup depending on what the data looks like. You can either use VLOOKUP, you can use HLOOKUP, you can use XLOOKUP. A lot of the time, you find out that you have data from different systems that you probably download to Excel, and you now want to merge this data. And the best way to merge data when you're picking data from different sources is using a form of lookup or the other. So this is like a HR system, and we have the employee ID on this side. We have the last name, we have the first name. Of course, the data is small because it's just for practice, but you can imagine an organization with like 2,000 employees. You can imagine how long the data will be. And then you have another data showing the pay report, the pay for the employee. However, on this second data, you don't have the names of the employees. You just have the employee IDs. And further down, we have where the employee lives on another set of data. The unique thing about these three sets of data is the employee ID. We know that if it's an ID, it should be unique per employee. So we're going to use that to merge this data together. And the first thing we're going to look at is VLOOKUP. That's vertical lookup. And we're going to do it on this side of the data. So we have the employee ID, and we need to bring in the first name of the employee and the last name. Without a lookup, the only thing you can do without using VLOOKUP is to look at this data. Look for 990678 and manually look down and see whose ID this is. And you know that if you have a lot of data, that is not feasible. You can't do that. And at the same time, that is also prone to errors. So to use a VLOOKUP for this data, the first thing we need to check when we're looking up data is to make sure that what we are going to use as our lookup data is unique. So I'll first look at this bit and make sure that these employee IDs, there is no duplicate. It's possible that there's a duplicate in your data. So the first thing you need to deal with before you do lookup is to make sure you don't have duplicates. Because if you have duplicates, it would not work. It will give you the incorrect answer, but we'll get to that later on. I'm going to practice with that. So to do a VLOOKUP, you can start by typing your lookup, VLOOKUP equal to, you can start by equal to. I'm going to use two methods. So the first one is we'll bring up the function box. So what we want to do here, if you don't know where VLOOKUP is, you can type it here, VLOOKUP, go, and then it will bring up your VLOOKUP. But by the time you start using VLOOKUP regularly, you would know how to type it in straight without using the function box. We're going to use the two methods today. So I've picked VLOOKUP, and then it comes up with a function argument box. Our lookup value, the first question is, what's your lookup value? We want to look up employee ID 990678. So I'll click on that. And then you go to the next field, which is asking you for your table array. It's asking you what table, where do you want to bring this information from? So you need to tell it where to look for the information and where to bring it from. We want to bring the information from this table. So we'll select the table where we're bringing the information from. And for VLOOKUP, you have to make sure that when you select the table, your your unique data that you're looking up, your lookup value, has to be on the first column of your table. So you always have to select your table in the way that your lookup value is on the first column. And it will always look to the right. So if you want to find information to the left, you're going to have to look for something else to use, not VLOOKUP. After putting our table array, it's going to ask us for the next thing, which is the column index number. If you notice, this is our table, right? It has 3 columns. The employee ID is on the first column, the last name is on the second column, and the first name is on the third column. What we are looking for here is the first name. So we want it to come from the third column of the table. So we put 3 here. And then the next field is asking us for is range lookup. What this means is it is asking you that if I can't find this data that you're looking for, what should I do? Should I bring something close to it, or do you want the exact data? In this case, we don't want something close. We just want you to bring in the data. If you can't find it, then fine. But we want you to bring the exact data. So we'll type in false here. So don't look for anything else if you can't find it. And then we click OK. And if you look down our table here, we can see that this is our 990678. And the first name of this employee is Brad. And it has brought Brad in. If we want to do it for last name, can someone help us for the last name? Can someone help us to do the last name?
So
if we start with the function box.
Yeah, and then VLOOKUP.
Okay, that's the VLOOKUP.
And value will be D3.
What's our lookup value?
D3.
D3. Oh,
J3.
J3. Oh, yeah.
J3.
J3. That's J3 there. Employee ID. Is that a lookup value?
Sorry, yeah, J3.
It has to be J4, not J3. I know my screen. Maybe my screen is small.
J4.
J4. And where are we bringing it from?
Last name.
What's the table array? Where are we bringing this information from?
C4.
C4?
D4.
Don't forget, we have to select the whole table here because we need information from this table.
We select the whole table.
We select the whole table.
Yes.
Okay. And then the column index. What column do we need from the table?
Last name.
And what column is that?
C.
Column C.
C17.
Yeah, but do we put column C
Column
there?
2.
So we
Just
put 2.
Column 2.
Yeah, because it's the second column, 2. Thank you.
Yeah, 2.
And then for our range lookup, what do we put?
C false.
False, okay? Because we want the exact thing. And then okay. And then it's brought in Pete, which is correct. So we have a formula here, we have a formula here. And one thing with Excel is once you type your formula in once, you don't really have to type it in again. You can just drag it to wherever you want, right?
Yeah.
So even the Pete, we did not even have to type that in. We can just drag it and then adjust the formula. So let's drag this. Let's drag this. I'm going to drag this down. So we've dragged it down and we have some errors. So it's come up with some errors. Look at 392.128. So you can come up with an error if you cannot find that data. So we're going to manually check if that data is actually on the table or not. So 392.128. Where's 39? So this is 392.128. 392.128 is actually on the table. Why do we have an error? Why do you think we have an error? Why do we have an error here? I'm going to click the formula so you can the formula bar so you can see what has happened. Can anyone see what has happened?
Yeah. I think the table, like from column 21, 22, 23, 24, there's no value there.
Column, sorry.
So you
Yeah, there's no value there.
selected.
It doesn't really matter.
Wait,
Table
isn't it
selection
number?
has changed.
The table selection has changed.
Stay exactly.
Yeah, the table has moved because we dragged it without
Yeah, we
doing
did
one
drag it.
important thing.
Yeah, we have to start from the beginning.
So we dragged it without doing one important thing. Once you know that you're going to drag your formula, you have to freeze some cells that you don't want to move. Because once you put your formula, the formula is relative, which is why when you drag it, it works. But if you want it to be fixed on a particular cell, you have to freeze it. And the way you freeze it is you have to put $1 in front of either the row or the column. If you want to freeze the row, you put $1 in front of the row. If you want to freeze the column, you put $1 in front of the column. That's a dollar sign. I'm going to show you. So when we did the first one, that's Brad Pitt, okay? We know that anywhere we want to put this formula, this table is always what we're going to reference. And because we don't want that table to move when we drag a formula, what we'll do is, I want to freeze this table. This is a table that I want to freeze. It's from B3 to cell D20. So you can manually just put $1. If I put $1 in front of B, that means I've frozen the column B. If I put $1 in front of 3, I've frozen the row 3. I'll put another $1 here and another $1 here. So I've frozen that. Enter. And because I know that I want to move it, I'm going to delete this for a minute. So when I move this, I also want to move it to, I want to be able to drag that formula across to the last name and just change the column it's picking from on the table. If I drag this way, it's going to give me an error. And the reason why it's giving me an error, I'm going to highlight the formula, is because my employee ID, I have not frozen it. So it's moved. So what I would do before I drag it to the side is I would also freeze column J because I don't want column J to move. I know my employee ID is always, I'm going to be referencing column J. So I would freeze column J. But because I'm going to be dragging this down, I'm not going to freeze row 4 because I want it to be able to go to row 5, row 6, row 7. So I'll only freeze column J and enter. So I'll delete what we did here. If we now drag this down, can you see that we don't have any error? The last one that we had an error, if you reference it, you see that it would always be picking this table because we have frozen this table. Anywhere you click on, that table is frozen. Anywhere you copy this formula, anywhere you put this formula, it is always going to be referencing this table because it is already frozen. And then to move it to the last name, if I drag it across, I know that because it's frozen, it will still give me Brad as the first name. And because it's still saying, give me column 3 from this table. And you can just simply change this 3 to 2 because that's the column we want, and enter. And then I can drag that all the way down. And that completes my table. So once you put the formula in once, make sure you freeze whatever you need to freeze. Any cell you need to freeze, make sure you freeze it so that you can just copy that formula, drag it anywhere you like, and you don't need to do that formula again. So we're going to do this one more time before we try another method. So who is going to help us? Let's try this first name again. VLOOKUP is something that a lot of people feel is difficult, but it's the easiest thing. So I want you to know how to be confident in doing VLOOKUP from this lesson because it's very, very easy to do. Can someone help us with this? Well, who is going to help us?
Can I try?
Yes, please.
Okay. So click on the function button.
Okay.
Click on VLOOKUP.
Okay.
Click OK. It's not selecting.
VLOOKUP. Okay.
Yes. The lookup value. We are going with the first one.
No, this is where we are.
Oh, okay. The lookup value is 39. That should be. Oh no. Oh no.
So we are on this.
3910.
So
Yes,
3910.
just select it.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
select it.
we'll click on that. Okay.
Yes. Then the
And
table
then our
array.
table.
We'll select the table.
Select the table.
Yes.
And
Then
our
the
column
column
index.
first name or last name. First name.
First name.
3.
3.
And then the range lookup is false.
It's false. Thank you. That's perfect. And okay.
Click OK. Then we go and freeze the.
So if you need to drag it, then you go and freeze.
Yes,
How do we freeze?
We add the $ in front of the
Okay.
the column numbers and row numbers.
So another fast way to freeze it is you can use the F4 button on your computer.
Oh.
So if you use the function on F4, well, on my keyboard is function on F4. It might be different on your laptop, but it's F4 button, something plus F4. On my keyboard is function F4. I know my keyboard is slightly different to my laptop keyboard. So if you play around with it and see what it is. So if I do function F4, can you see that it's putting the $? So this is where we started from with no $. When you do it the first time, it will freeze both of them, the row and the column. If I press F4 again, it releases one of them. So it's only frozen the row. If I press F4 again, it freezes just the column. So you can use that as your shortcut. In this case, we want both of them frozen. So that is it. And we need to freeze something else.
Yes, the index value.
The
first value.
The first value, this J12.
Yes.
So we need to freeze
the
column J.
Column J.
Thank you. And that is it.
That's it.
And then when we do this, what do we do with the last name? If we drag it across the last name, what do we change here?
Then we go back and
freeze.
We will change the column index value to 2.
To 2. Thank you. We change it to 2. And that is it. So now that we know how to use the function box, we're going to do it without the function box.
Yeah, sorry, Kemi. Quick question. Yeah, for the column 3, yeah?
Yeah.
How do you identify it? Is that the first table? Is that column D, like letter D, column
So
3?
your column 3, as long as this is our table, right? That's our
Okay, yeah.
table.
Okay,
This is column 1.
that's right. Okay.
This is 2, and this is 3.
Okay, excellent. Okay.
So
I wouldn't
depending
judge.
on what you've selected, so if this is my table,
Yes.
this is column 1, this is column
Wow.
2, this is column 3, this is column 4.
Fantastic.
So that's how you select it. But always remember, your lookup data has to be on your column 1, because that's where it's looking. It will look at column 1, look for that lookup value, and then bring what is in the column that you've selected. And before we go on, I'm just gonna do that. So for this one, if we do let's do it without the function box. Then we'll start looking at different errors that you can get and what to look out for. We'll deal with that after this. So without the lookup box, it's easier to do it without, going to the box and selecting data. Once you become a guru, which you'll be after this night, you just need to type it in. So we know that, well, it's VLOOKUP, right? And we know that to put any formula in Excel, you start with your equal to. So we do equal to VLOOKUP. That's the first thing we type. If you type VLOOKUP and open a bracket, can you notice that it's brought out the table, but in a short form here? So it's going to prompt you on what you need to put next. So we have lookup value. So the first one here is lookup value. And if you notice, that lookup value is highlighted. So you know that that's the next thing you need to put after your bracket, after you've opened a bracket. And in this case, what's our lookup value? Our lookup value is J5. So I'll click on J5 and then put equal to, a comma. Once you put a comma, can you notice that the lookup value, the boldness of the lookup value has disappeared, and now I have my table array bold, which is telling you that the next thing you need to identify and put in your formula is your table. So you select your table. And once you put a comma, it moves to the next one, and it's prompting you about your column index number. What number are we bringing in? In this case, it's the first name, so it's column 3. So column 3, and then comma, and then it's asking you if it's true or false. So you can just type in your false or just double click on your false and close your brackets and enter. Is that clear?
Yes,
let's do that.
That's clear. Yeah.
Let's do that again. So if you start with equal to VLOOKUP and open a bracket. And what's our lookup value? It's asking us for lookup value. Click on the lookup value.
Look on the value.
J5.
Mm-hmm. And after that, what do we do?
Comma.
And then
We select our table.
Select
all
the tables. All the tables.
After selecting our table, comma.
Column
index.
Column index is
3.
What column?
It's
No,
2.
2.
It's 2. We're looking for
Last
last
name.
name. 2.
Comma.
And then we know the last thing is our false.
4. Okay,
And
so this is the
enter.
Okay.
So it is that simple. Like once you select, and if you are doing a lookup, let me see that. When you are doing a lookup, and you have a lot of data, when you select your data, it would actually, it will count the column for you. Let me see if this does it. So if I so if you're selecting the whole column, you'll be able to, you can count the number. When you select it, can you see that it's showing
Yeah.
you 7, 9, 10? So when you're working with a lot of data and you're just selecting the whole column, we're not selecting the whole column this time around. You can always use that. And also, if you are working with large data and you cannot count the column, you can literally just, number your column, like 1, if you number your column 1, 2, 3. So imagine you have you can have data that goes to BBs, CC and stuff. If you can number your column so that when you are working, you just pick the number. So for instance, for this one, if we do equal to VLOOKUP, and then we click our lookup value, comma, and then we select our table, comma, and we know we are looking for first name, which is 2.
3.
No, 3. 3. First name is 3, comma, false.
Wow.
So you can actually number your columns to pick. Sometimes you're working with large data and you're tired of counting. So just number your column. And then and then you know that you can always just change it when you drag it around. Okay, so let's Ortega.
Sorry, please, I got lost when you're talking about the freezing part.
The freezing of the columns.
Yeah.
Okay. So we freeze columns so that when we drag our formula, it doesn't change what we want it to look at. If you look at this bit here, we want it to always reference this table.
Okay.
If we drag this formula down, it will stop referencing the table. What do we have? Oh, okay. You know why? Because it's also moved. So it's giving us double error because it's moved as well. That has moved. I'm going to change this back to 3. So if you look at all these ones, the table has moved. That's the table highlighted. And we don't want this table to move, which is why we freeze the columns and the rows. So any cell we want to keep static, we just freeze it. And the way you freeze it is by putting a $sign in front of your column and your row, or you can use your F4 function on your keyboard. So I'm just putting it manually now. And I want to freeze the column J as well. If I now drag this down after freezing it, then we won't have the error anymore because anywhere you look, this table has not moved. How will you know the column to freeze? The column you are using is what you freeze. The column you know that you don't want to move. So for instance, why did we freeze J, column J here? Because this is our lookup ID. That is what we want to be looking up. When you want to look at last name, if I drag it here, we still want to be looking at this employee ID, which is why we have frozen the column J. And and the reason why we've frozen the table is because we are always going to be referencing this table and we don't want it to move. That is why. So you choose what you don't want to move. Any data you want to always, reference, you freeze it so that when you drag a formula anywhere, it doesn't move. So this, we just change to 2. And anytime you drag it, it would not move. Okay. Did we notice? Yeah, we got an error last time because I used these fields and I did not freeze it. So of course, when you drag it, it would move and it will give you an error. The straight one, Adolisa.
Yes, so my question, I have a question, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so if we have large data and they are in different sheets, we can easily run the VLOOKUP like this and it will still go.
Yeah. So anywhere the data is. So I'm going to copy this to the next sheet now. Let me copy this to sheet 2. Anywhere the data is, you can pick it. It might be on another workbook. It might be on another sheet. It doesn't matter. Anywhere the data is, you can pick the data. So this is referencing this table, but I don't want this table this time around. I want the table I copied to the next sheet. You get the same thing. So just go and select it wherever it is. The rule is just make sure that your lookup data starts on the, is on the first column. If we don't select from the first column, for instance, let's do this. Equal to VLOOKUP, open a bracket, that's our lookup value, comma. If I select this, or if I select this, let me select it. If I select this table like this, right, comma, what will be my column index?
4.
4, because it's the first name, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and comma, false, and enter. Why do we have an error?
Because the lookup value is not in the first column.
Because the lookup value is not in
the first column is.
No, it's just because the lookup value is not in the first column. So there's nothing for it to look up. So it's looking at the first column, looking for this number on the first column. And once it can't find it, then it doesn't bring anything. So your lookup value always has to be on the first column of your selection. So if we change that to this, so I've reduced my selection. And then, of course, it's now column 3, not 4. So I'm just going to undo that. So there are different types of errors you can find. So like this one is giving you, when you give you a reference, it means that there is something wrong with the formula. So not that you can't find it, but that means your formula is incorrect. And we can see that the formula is incorrect because it's looking for column 4, and your table selection only has 3 columns anyway. So it's going to it's telling you it's not correct. If it comes up with an NA, that means it can't find the data. And you can get NA for different reasons. So for instance, this number that we're looking at, sometimes the formatting of your numbers really matters for VLOOKUP. If it's formatted as a text, for instance, it won't find it. So let me change this back to 3. So we know that we have 830, 385. And that's 830, 385. We have it, is there on our data. So if for any reason, if I format this as a text, if I do this, even though this shows as a number, but the formatting is different. So when Excel is looking at this, it's not seeing a number, it's seeing a text. So it won't be able to find it here. So you get an error because it's looking for this, but it's not here. If I change this to, if I make it a text, then it will find it. So sometimes when you're doing VLOOKUP, you have to make sure that your formatting is the same. Otherwise, it won't find it. So sometimes when you have like loads of data, you realize that some of them might have been formatted like a text. So the first thing you need to do is make sure, you either convert that to a number or convert to a text so that your VLOOKUP will work. In in subsequent lessons, we're going to look at, formatting, those different formattings and how you can, change it quickly to what you need it to be. So we've got, so we have two people raising their hands. So sorry, what's your question?
Otega, please go ahead if you have a question. Your hand is up.
Okay.
Sorry, I want to on that question too. At what stage can the range lookup be true?
At what stage can it be true? We'll get to true. We'll get to true.
Okay.
Yeah,
No.
we'll still get to true. But I want us to get this first. So we've done the first name and the last name. We have another table here. Before I move to that table, okay? Remember I said that, your data, your lookup has to be, your ID that you're looking up has to be unique. And you have to always check that it's unique. So if, for instance, so I have this lookup here, I'm going to copy this. If I change this to that, so we have two of this. I'm going to color that yellow. So I've duplicated this ID, which is definitely incorrect because your employee ID should be unique, right? And I'm going to put this back here and make it 3. So when I do a lookup to look at this employee ID, what has it given me? It's giving me John, which is this one here. But we know that when we're doing it, when this was unique, when this employee ID was unique, it was Brad, right? So if you do a lookup on data like this, how do we know which one is right? Is it meant to be John or should it be Brad? What lookup? If you do a lookup, it will, once it finds the data it's looking for, it will bring you the answer. It doesn't matter if you have 5 other different people with that employee ID, it will bring you John. And depending on what you're doing, that will be incorrect because it's not giving you everything on the table. So you only use VLOOKUP when you have a unique ID that you can use to look up between two tables, two data sets. If the ID is not unique, then it would be incorrect. So if you have something like this, then if you use a lookup, that will be the wrong formula to use because it's going to give you something different. If I select my table this way, it's going to give me Pete because it's just going to start from my table selection. So always ensure that your data is unique before you do a lookup. So what was this before? Okay, I'm just going to restore that to what it was before. And then we're back to Brad Pitt. That's 2. We're going to get to how to, you can use conditional formatting to always check your data to make sure it's unique before you do a lookup. Because sometimes if you do a lookup and then after doing the lookup, you now realize that your data was not unique. So always use conditional formatting to highlight. We're going to get to that in other lessons on how to check for duplicates. The next thing we're doing is we need to bring the information from this table here. So you have another table. And you need to bring in the city and the state. So we need to bring that here. And at the same time, we need to bring in the pay band. From this table. So you have all this information from different systems in the organization, and you know, with different systems, sometimes they don't talk to one another. So you need to like merge all this information, probably to load it to a new HR system. How do we bring in the city? How do we bring in the city? So this is the table for the city. We have our employee ID. Can someone help us, please?
We use VLOOKUP, I think.
Equal to?
Okay. Equal to VLOOKUP.
VLOOKUP.
We'll select the employee ID, the value in front.
But before we do that, we have to open a bracket.
Okay, yes, a bracket, yes. Sorry.
Open a bracket.
Then the
select your employee ID.
Yes.
Because that is what is common to this table as well.
Yeah.
Comma.
Select the table.
Select the table array.
So we'll select the table.
Yes. Comma.
Comma.
Column.
The column index is 2.
2. Yeah. Comma.
The false.
False. Okay. Enter. Okay, because we want to drag this to state.
Yes, we need to freeze the rows and the column.
What do we freeze here?
We freeze the you can see that.
We freeze the table.
We freeze the column.
Yeah.
We freeze the table.
We freeze the table. I'm going to freeze the table. And I'm going to freeze J4 and enter. So that when I drag it down, it will be correct. Okay. But now I'm going to delete this. Remember I said once we type the formula once you have a lookup anywhere, you can just copy and paste it to wherever you need it. So once you type it in first, I didn't need to type in another VLOOKUP here. What can I do? If I drag this here, of course, it's still referencing this table. I'm going to, so once I click it, I know that this table, I want it to be on this table. So I'll just drag it. I'm just going to move that table. So this is my new table now. That's the table I want. So I'm just going to move it. So I've moved the table. And my city is column 2 anyway. So it's already column 2. And enter. And I have Austin, which is where this 990678 lives, Austin, Texas. And of course, I can now drag it to state. And all I need to change here is the column I'm picking from, which is going to be column 3. Do we understand that? How to move it? So once you click on your formula, you click on your formula bar, you can see your selection. So when you copy formula across, you'll be able to see your selection and you can move that selection anywhere else that you want it. So just move it to where you want it to be. So we have city and we have the state. We want to bring in the pay band. And this is where we use the true. So if we look at the pay of these employees, we have different pay bands here depending on what they earn. And this is the minimum. So we want it to, so when we use the true, we want it to bring in something that is close to it. So if I do equal to, although we don't need to retype this, we can always copy and move our form, copy and paste, and just move it to where we want it. But we'll type it again. Equal to VLOOKUP, open a bracket. What are we looking up now? So this is the table we want to look up. What do you think our lookup value should be?
Lookup value now should be pay 84.3.
Yeah, it should be pay because that's what we're looking up. And then we'll put a comma, and our table is down here. Okay. Comma. And what column do we want? Our table only has 2 columns, so it's going to be
Column 1.
No, it's not going to be, because we are bringing in the pay band.
2.
This is our lookup, and we're bringing in the pay band. So that will be column 2.
2.
And then comma. And this is where we want true. So we want an approximate match. If you use a false, you will never find any of this unless there's an exact match. So we go for true this time around and close the brackets. Shadrach.
Yeah, why isn't it true this time? Sorry.
So we're looking for a band. That's why we're using a true. So we want it to fall. So level A, your pay minimum will be 25,000. From level 2, your pay minimum is 50,000. So we want to know what pay band that pay falls within. That's why we're using a true. So if you look at this is 84,000 and it's come up with level C. If we look at level C, your pay minimum is 75,000. From 100,000 is level D. So that is C. Now we put in all our formula. Did we freeze? Let's see. So that's frozen, that's frozen, that's frozen. We did not freeze this one, so let's freeze this. So we need to freeze K, and we need to freeze our table. Okay, and enter. And now that we have everything frozen, all we need to do to populate our table is to drag it all the way down. And we have an NA because he can't find it. Why do we think he can't find that? Adolisa.
The amount is not there. The amount is not there.
The amount is not there because the minimum is 25,000. So it's looking up, it's looking anything below 25,000, it can't find it. Because the pay band here says the minimum is 25. So that is not there. And NA is usually good because it might be that, there's something missing that you need to fix, or there's an error that you need to fix. So for instance, if this is actual pay and someone is looking at this and like, okay, the minimum pay for our company is 25,000. Why is this person on 23,000? So it might be that this person works part-time and there's one information missing that is not there, or maybe the pay is actually wrong and it needs to be fixed. So that would tell you, to look into the data. If this data, if we change it to 26,000, for instance, then it will pick up at level A. I won't change that. Is this clear? So you have a lookup, you need to populate. All you need to do is type your formula once and just drag it. And then all you need to do is, before you drag it, make sure you have all the right places frozen. Anything you need to freeze it. And then when you drag it, all you need to do is change the column or change the table you're looking up, depending on what you're doing. Is that clear? We're gonna do HLOOKUP quickly. Okay. Is this clear before we move on to HLOOKUP? HLOOKUP is also it's very similar.
Hi, Kemi.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to take you back a bit. You know where you highlighted the table and
Yeah.
then you put the dollar sign there? I
Yeah.
wanted to know what was the shortcut from how were you able to put that by just highlighting it? I don't know if I
F4.
understand.
Oh, F4 on your
F4.
keyboard. My keyboard is function plus F4.
So you just highlight the table and then click on F4 and
Yeah,
that's
so
it.
if you click on the
Okay.
formula, so you highlight where you want to freeze. So if I highlight here,
Okay.
if I do function F4, you see it changing.
Okay.
So on my keyboard is function F4.
Okay. Thank you.
On my laptop, I think is F4 and something, but I use an external keyboard. So if you look at what if you can just check what works for you. Probably F4 and
Thank you.
I never use the keys on my laptop. So it's F4. The shortcut is F4. Mine is function plus F4. Okay. So we've got that. Okay, let's move to HLOOKUP. I'm gonna.
Sorry, Kevin. Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, for the NA, is there any way to fix that?
For the NS is just telling you that the information is not there. If the information is not there, it's not there.
Oh, okay.
So it's either you know that the information is not there, or if it depends on what you're doing. If it's something that you have to add the information in, if the information should be there, then you know you have to look into why the information is not there.
No.
So NA just tells you that the information you are not looking for is not on the table you're referencing.
Mm.
It might be that you're referencing the wrong table. So depending on what you're doing,
Okay.
sometimes NAs are good because sometimes maybe what you're doing is that we want to know what is not there. So when you have NAs, you know that those ones are not there. So depending on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Okay. But if it says reference, then there's something wrong with the formula. So you have to look at the formula you've typed in just to make sure it's correct. And also sometimes NA, when you have NAs, I always advise that you check manually just to make sure that that information is really not there and it's not like a formatting thing. So anytime you do your lookup, please always do some spot check. So if I have like NA, if I have a couple of NAs, I can just like do a control find for this pay or for this employee ID, just to make sure, just to be sure that that information you are looking for is really not in that data. So it's always good to double check. But if you do a lookup and you know that you've typed everything in correctly and you know that the information is there and it brings up like all NAs, know that there's something wrong. It's probably the formatting. And you have to do something with the formatting to make sure it picks up. I'm going to stop sharing this and share the next one. So the difference between HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP is just the way it's looking. VLOOKUP is looking up the columns. HLOOKUP is looking up the rows. That's just the only difference. So you have to select the way you select for VLOOKUP. You have to use your unique ID to look it up, and it will just look up the rows. So depending on the type of data you have, it might be that you need to use HLOOKUP, depending on how your data is set up. So for here, we have employee ID, we have the name, department, salary, bonus, and total. The difference with this data is that all this information, they are on rows as against columns that we had the last time. And here we have employee 502. We know employee 502 is a small data. This is employee 502, which is Andy. And we want to know what department Andy employee 502 is. We know Andy is employee 502. Andy is in customer service. So that is what we're expecting it to bring. So what we'll do is let's start with our function box. So if we start with our function box and type in HLOOKUP, we can bring in HLOOKUP. And then you can see that the table is exactly the same as the last time. Our lookup value in this case is 502. And please always click on it. Don't type it in, because when you type it in, it's prone to error. So that's 502. And then our table, where are we looking this up? As with the previous one, this employee ID has to be on the first row. So if we select this, that's our table.
Row 1.
Yeah, so row 1 all the way down. And then our row index, what would it be? So we're looking for department, right? And we've selected our table. What number are we going to put for the row index?
1.
1.
3.
What?
No, 5.
Yeah.
Sorry. Row index.
5. Why 5? Why 1?
502.
3.
So we're looking.
3.
So this is the other way around. Yeah, it's
Employer's
gonna be
name, we're looking
3.
at 2. 2.
No, we're looking at
No.
3.
No,
Customer
we're
service.
looking at
Customer
3
service. 3.
departments.
3.
Yeah, this is our table here. We've selected
Customer
this
service.
table. This is our table. Look at our table.
Yeah.
That's our table that we've selected. So in this case, we're counting the rows. We're not counting the columns. So the row 1 is employee ID. Row 2 is employee name. Row
Yeah.
3 is department. Salary is 4. Bonus is 5. And total pay is 8.
But we're
So
dealing
in
with
this
departments.
case,
3.
yeah, department is 3. So it would be 3. I've selected this again. So that will be 3. And of course, what is our logical? Is it false or true? We know that we want
False.
an exact match, so we want false. And okay. And that has brought in customer service, which is what we're expecting. So what is the salary of employee with ID 505? What's the salary of employee ID 505? Before we start copying and pasting.
70,000.
70,000.
Okay, but we need to use it. We need to use lookup.
Okay.
So let's start by typing it. Equal to
HLOOKUP.
HLOOKUP.
Bracket.
Open a bracket.
Lookup.
Then it's asking us for our lookup value. What's our lookup value?
505. We'll click on it.
505.
505.
5.
Comma.
Comma.
The table we select.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to select our table. Let's select our table. Okay. And comma.
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 Form.
What are we looking for? We're looking
Salary.
for salary. So
Salary.
that is 4.
4.
And then comma.
False.
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 So can we see that it's exactly the same as VLOOKUP, just with a slight difference? We're looking up rows as against column. Okay, so let's copy. Let's copy this. Omolara.
What did you do?
Sorry, while we were highlighting the table, you did not start from the data the way it was VLOOKUP that you highlighted from the beginning. But
It doesn't matter.
Yes, we did start from the
It doesn't matter. I've selected it.
All right.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
What matters is where your lookup value, what row your value is. So it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Now let's freeze this. Let's
Sorry,
freeze.
please.
Yeah. Okay.
It gave us false when you started from the let's say the A. You know, the table starts from B, but the other time it gave us false when if you start from A.
So if the same reason, it will give me false if I start from row 2.
Okay.
As long as what you are looking up has to be on your first row. So the reason why the last one gave us false was because there was nothing on column A. Our table started from column B. The same reason this one, our table starts from row 3. If we select row 2, it will give us an error.
Okay.
If we select row 2, it will not find it.
Okay.
So make sure you start from where your lookup value is, where you expect it to be.
Okay.
I'm going to undo
Thank you.
that. Is that clear? Now
Yes, thank you.
let's freeze this table so that we can just copy and paste it. So what do we need to freeze here? Let's freeze the formula. What do we need to freeze?
B3L8.
B3L8, because that's our table. Let's freeze that totally. And what else do we need to freeze?
B12.
Yeah, but just B.
Just B.
Just B. Yeah, I'll just freeze B.
Why are we freezing just B, please?
Because I want to copy this. If I copy this here, if I copy this here, if I freeze 12, it would only be referencing this 12. It will not move to 16.
Oh, okay.
But I know that everything is on column B, which is why we are frozen B.
Okay.
So if I copy this, I'm going to delete this. So we've frozen what we need to freeze. I'll just copy, Control C, and Control V here, which is paste. And of course, it's still bringing in the department because it's 3. But what we need is a salary. And what we need to do is just change this 3 to 4.
That's right.
And then if we copy this to here, and we're looking for the total pay of employee with ID 507. Total pay is on what row?
6.
6. So if we change this to 6, we have the total pay of employee 507, which is 30,000. Is this clear?
Yes.
So it's basically the same thing. Just make sure that, the formatting is right. Your lookup value is unique on the table. And you select the table properly. Shadrach.
Sorry, can you just explain from when you freeze again? Because I just got lost from there,
Okay.
please.
So what do you not understand from the freezing?
So I understand that you freeze only the B because obviously I think you can't freeze the 12 because the 12th one is on department. What is department? I think that's where I am.
Okay. So let me. So if we freeze the 12, let's do it the other way around. If I freeze the 12 as well, right? So I've frozen the 12. If I copy this and paste it here, if you look at this, can you see that because I've frozen the 12, it's referencing this cell, and I want it to reference this cell. Of course, I can move it like this. I can move it here. But because I didn't want to do that, it was easier to just not freeze it because I did not need that row frozen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Which was why I did not freeze the row, and it was just the column.
All right.
So if I copy this, so I've only frozen the column here. If I copy that, Control C, and paste it here,